Hello, hello. Welcome to First Chapter Friday, y'all. I'm doing it this week. One of my favorite series, probably is my favorite series. And my phone starts going off now. This always happens every time I start recording, like phones start blowing up and even, just all the things start happening. Anyway, so guess what it is, y'all? You've heard me talk about my favorite author, Joel C. Rosenberg, and you've heard me talk about the J.B. Collins series, which is like my favorite series. So we're going to do the first chapter of the first book of the J.B. Collins series, and it is The Third Target. So the other books in this series, book 2 is called Without Warning. No, it's not. Hang on. Book 2, I don't know out of order. Book 1 is The Third Target. Book 2 is The First Hostage, and book 3 is Without Warning. So, it's even signed, y'all, check it out. And he even, when I was in Israel, he actually lives in Israel now with his family. He moved there several years ago. And when I was in Israel, he actually joined us on our trip one day, and this was before, it was like right before Without Warning came out, and so he was kind of talking about it. It was really cool. I don't think that one's signed though. I think my second one's signed also though. Yep, the second one is signed as well. Pretty cool. Anyway, so yeah, this is the book that introduced me to Joel C. Rosenberg. And the cool thing about his series, whenever he writes a series, is the way that it ends. Sorry, I'm having to get them in order. That's the OCD side of me. But when it ends, I mean, like, well, several things. Okay, first of all, his writing style, his chapters are short enough to where you can like one more chapter yourself until 3 in the morning, and you just like you can't tear yourself away from it. And then when it ends, you turn the page and there's nothing there, and you're like, wait, what? No way. And then literally the second book or the next book in the series, it literally picks up right where the other one left off. So there was one of his series where it ended up with kind of the main character and a secondary character like free falling, starting this like free fall out of a plane and like this massive height, and they're trying to escape. And then the next book picks up in the free fall, and it's really cool. So, and that one actually, the third book just came out on that series. So, all right, The Third Target. I feel like I'm rambling because I love his books, and like literally, when you start his books, just give yourself some time because you'll get sucked into them. So The Third Target. So let me, of course, I'll read the inside flap or the back. Yeah, I'll read the inside flap. It says the Israelis and the Palestinians are on the verge of signing a historic, comprehensive treaty. After decades of conflict, the world awaits a new era of peace, but now a new threat is rising. The Islamic State, a dangerous al-Qaeda offshoot, also known as ISIS, is on the rampage. Already they have attacked 2 governments, brutally killing anyone who stands in their way. Now they have their sights set on a third target. But who will it be? The United States, Israel, or someone else? When award-winning New York Times correspondent J.B. Collins hears rumors that ISIS has captured a cache of chemical weapons, he risks everything by sneaking into Syria to locate and interview the commander of the terrorist organization. Under intense pressure from multiple governments not to publish his findings, he faces a decision that could cost him his career or his life. With the American president set to visit the region, the Middle East teeters on the edge of explosion. As a war-weary world hopes for peace and a bloodthirsty terrorist regime grows in strength, who will prevail? Can Collins, with the help of a mysterious and beautiful Mossad agent, alert the world to the danger before ISIS can unleash its apocalyptic vision? Or with chemical weapons in the hands of radical Islamic jihadists, is it already too late? So see, like, it's intense, okay? A lot of his books are these political thrillers. He's also written some nonfiction as well, but I haven't read any of that, to be honest. His fiction just, oh my gosh, whew, it's good. All right, part 1, July 20th, 1951, and it's marked as a little top secret stamp on it and everything. Okay, part 1, July 20th, 1951. Chapter 1, Jerusalem. I had never met a king before. 48 hours earlier, I received a summons from the palace to meet with His Majesty at a certain time in a certain place for an exceedingly rare interview with a foreign journalist. But now I was late and I was petrified. Sweat dripped down my face and inside the back of my shirt. As the sun blazed on the eastern sky, the cool of the morning was a distant memory. My freshly starched white collar was rapidly wilting. My crisply knotted azure tie was starting to feel like a noose around my perspiring neck. I glanced at my gold pocket watch, a graduation present from my father. And the knots in my stomach tightened further. I pulled an already damp handkerchief from the pocket of my navy blue pinstriped suit jacket, yet no matter how much I swiped at my brow, I knew it was a losing battle. It wasn't simply the sultry morning air that weighed heavy upon me. It was a nausea-inducing knowledge, indeed the rapidly increasing certainty, that I was going to be late for this appointment and below the most important moment of my career. I had been requesting this interview for the better part of a year and had been repeatedly rebuffed. Then, without warning, I received a telegram from the palace inviting me, A.B. Collins of the Associated Press, to come to Jerusalem and granting me an exclusive interview without limits or preconditions. I cabled my editors back in New York. They were ecstatic. I was ecstatic. For months, I had been reading everything I could about this intriguing, if elusive, monarch. I watched every bit of newsreel footage I could scrounge up. I called or met with every expert I could find who knew him or had met him or could give me any tidbit of insight into who he really was, what he wanted, and where he was headed next. Now the moment had come. I had been instructed to meet His Majesty, King Abdullah bin al-Hussein, ruler of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, at the entrance to the Dome of the Rock, precisely at noon. Oh, I know where that is. I've been there. That was in less than 10 minutes, and at this rate, I was never going to make it. So this is cool because I actually read this before I went to Israel, and so just kind of seeing some of these names, it's like, oh wait, I know where that is. I can absolutely picture it. Faster, man, can't you go any faster? I yelled at my driver. Leaning forward from the back seat, I pointed through the dust-smudged front window of the cramped little taxi that stank of stale cigarettes. It was an exercise in futility. The answer was pitifully obvious. No, he couldn't go any faster. It was a Friday. It was the holiest day of the week for the Muslims, and it was fast approaching high noon. Everyone and his cousin were heading to the Al-Aqsa Mosque for prayer. It had been this way for 12 centuries, and it would always be thus. No one was going to make an exception, not for a foreigner, not for a Westerner, and certainly not for a reporter. We were less than 100 yards from the Damascus Gate, the nearest entrance into the old city, but traffic was barely moving at all. I surveyed the scene before me and quickly considered my options. Ahead was a classic snapshot of the Orient I had come to know as a foreign correspondent for the Associated Press. A dizzying melange of vibrant colors and pungent odors and exotic architecture and intriguing faces straight out of central casting. I had seen it in Cairo and Casablanca and Baghdad and Beirut. Shopkeepers and street vendors who moments before had been brewing coffee and roasting peanuts and hawking everything from spices and kitchen supplies to bottles of Coca-Cola and religious trinkets for the pilgrims were now hurriedly shutting down for the day. Every taxi and truck and private car on the planet seemed to have converged on one traffic circle, their drivers honking their horns and yelling at one another, desperate to get home and then to the mosque. A siren wailed from the south, a police car perhaps, or maybe an ambulance, but it would never get through. A hapless constable sporting a dusty olive green Royal Jordanian uniform was blowing on a whistle he held in one hand, excuse me, while pointing a wooden club with the other. He shouted commands, but no one paid him much mind. Bearded, sun-drenched older men, their heads wrapped in white and black checkered cafes, pushed carts of fresh fruits and vegetables as quickly as they could through the filthy, unswept streets, while others led goats and camels through tiny gaps in the traffic back to whatever barns or stables they were usually kept in. Boys in their late teens and young 20s with no jobs and nothing better to do, and without fathers or grandfathers in sight, seemed in no hurry to get to prayer, taking their last drags on their cigarettes. They stared at giggling packs of young schoolgirls, scurrying past with eyes down, while older women in long robes and headscarves scowled disapprovingly as they rushed home with boxes of food or pots of water on their head. Suddenly, the muezzins, M-U-E-Z-Z-I-N, muezzin's haunting call to prayer began to blare from the loudspeakers mounted high up on the minarets. My heart nearly stopped. I was out of time and out of options. I was going to have to run for it. It was my only chance. I shouted over the din for my driver to let me out, tossed a few dinars his way, grabbed my leather satchel, donned my black fedora, and raced down the stone steps toward the crush of people flooding through the gate, jostling past the faithful without shame, though I knew my prospects were grim. I was supposed to meet His Majesty on the Temple Mount, what the Arabs called Al-Haram al-Sharif, the place of the noble sanctuary. After countless phone calls and telegrams from my office in Beirut to the press office in the palace in Amman, it had all been arranged. The most beleaguered and endangered monarch in the entire Muslim world would allow me to shadow him for the day and then sit down with him for his first interview with a Western journalist since a rash of assassinations had set the region on edge. I couldn't be late. The chief of the royal court would never forgive me. He had insisted I get there early. He had promised one of his servants would be waiting, but now they all might be gone by the time I arrived. I pushed my way through the crowd, a nearly impossible feat, but after considerable difficulty, I finally cleared through the massive stone archway and was inside the old city. Still ahead of me, however, was a throng of people pressing forward to the mosque. But I had been here numerous times as a war correspondent in 1948 and 49, and I had actually come to know these streets well. I decided to gamble. Rather than head straight into the shuk and up one of the two main streets toward the mosque, already clogged with thousands of worshippers, I moved left, stepped into a pharmacy, and before the owner could even yell at me, I was through the shop and out the back door. Breaking into a full run, I raced through a labyrinthine series of narrow side streets and alleyways, aiming for St. Stephen's Gate, also known as the Lion's Gate. Oh, I've been there too. And desperately trying to make up for lost time. As I neared my destination, however, I found that everything had come to a standstill. I could finally see the large green wooden doors that were the gateway to the epicenter of the epicenter, the entrance to the 37-acre plot upon which the third holiest site in Islam was situated. I was so close now, but no one was moving forward. Not a soul. And soon I saw why. A contingent of Jordanian soldiers blocked the way. People were yelling, demanding to be let in for prayer, but the grim-faced, heavily armed young men were having none of it. They had their orders, they shouted back. No one could enter until they received the all-clear sign. I was stuck, and like the crowd, I was furious. But I knew something they did not. The king was coming. He was heading to the Al-Aqsa Mosque for the noon prayers, surrounded by bodyguards who feared for his life, and for good reason. Right, chapter 1 of The Third Target, which is the J.B. Collins series, which is my favorite series. I mean, I think he is my favorite author, Joel C. Rosenberg. So pick it up, do some reading, and let me know what you think. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye.